Hi.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we have Michael and David both on the line, and you're on the air.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous,
Great.
Michael. How are you today?
Well, I'm glad you're doing well, David. I am blessed and highly favored.
Good, good. Well, as you know, I'm learning about a few things today on the computer, and Jeannie's showing me, so there's going to be several different things going on in my mind today. And what's on your mind for the talk show today?
Well, I thought I might talk today a little more about the output of our minds, our perception. This device that pretends that it's showing us what's going on in the world. And
good. You know, that's always such an intriguing one, and to be able to shift to get to see that of how the mind actually operates, and what it is that we're seeing, or at least what our mind is showing us, is not actually what is happening. And you know, I'm always reminded of that with that illusion with the magician. It's James, that great illusion where he saws someone in half, and it's like, I'm watching this and my mind is telling me that that's happening, and yet I know that that's not real. It's not actually going on.
illusions, yes. In fact,
yeah,
the title of a great book that's well worth reading, Illusions by Richard Bach.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
So let's check with Jeannie and see if there are any, or are you running the switchboard today, David?
Jeannie is running the switchboard. I'm watching her and learning how to operate the switchboard, so that I have that. So I'm building the brain cells for it. So right now it doesn't look like that there's any. There are a couple of people that are on. My goodness, this is going to be a challenge for me to watch and do this at the same time. There are a couple of people that are listening in. I'm not sure if there's any questions as of yet. You want to ask Jeannie? Jeannie, there's someone with some questions out there?
No, right now it's just Michael and you and me on live. There's several people that are sitting there listening, but nobody. We just got a hand that just jumped up. So we have a caller. And so this is area code 765, and you're on the air.
Hi. By now you ought to know it's me.
Lady Jane.
Hi, Jeannie. I just tuned in and I was listening to the book. You know, David, you said Illusions was one of my favorite books. And I noticed that all of us tend to migrate, toward the same frequencies of books or people we like, and that's why we're all joined together here out of frequency and out of love. But if people haven't gotten Illusions, it's a wonderful book, and it's about us. And but I don't have any questions. I'm just verifying I'm here, I'm listening, and Illusions, we have that in common.
Delighted. Well, it fits perfectly with our topic today, and of course the book Illusions is a subtitle of The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah, and of course in that case Messiah meaning someone who's willing to tell people that their perceptions are not correct. What happens when people find out their perceptions are not correct, most often, and that the behaviors that come from their errant perceptions are destructive to them, most often people's stress goes right through the roof. And most people, when their stress goes up like that, they have their stress wired to attacking or getting rid of the source of the information that shows them truth, not getting rid of the illusion, which is interesting. There's a great scene, if you haven't seen the movie yet, The King's Speech.
I didn't see it yet.
Yeah, well, it's a powerful demonstration that we're all the same. There's nobody living on any other level, including any king who wants to pretend and lord it over us. But there's a wonderful scene there where, the king has to go to a therapist. Well, it's a true story. And he goes to this therapist, and finally, after some, attack and back and forth as the therapist sets the ground rules and will not succumb to the king's manipulations, because he's used to being obeyed, he finally says to the king, you realize that you're going to have to deal with your fear. And the king absolutely goes berserk and rips him up one side and down the other, which is just typical of we humans who live in a fantasy world and don't realize the truth. And when truth shows up, stress goes up, because the holding down of truth creates an internal stress. And all of a sudden, when we're shown truth, that stress comes to awareness, and most people just want to attack when that happens. We can rewire our brains so that if that stress goes up because we're in blockage of truth and truth comes forward, we can rewire ourselves so that it leads to healing. Instead of it being a stimulus to attack, it becomes a stimulus to go, oh, I'm in stress. Gee, you just showed me something I don't like. My hostility's up. I think I'll go in and heal my hostility. But it takes some training to get to the point where the average person can do that. So when we look at this idea of illusions versus truth, the mind, well, virtually every mind on the planet is locked into blockage of truth. And you can easily tell that by listening to a simple quote that Albert Einstein says, and then there's a powerful quote that I'd like to offer that ties in, that comes from Mother Teresa. And what Albert says is that if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. In other words, your brain is generating movies that aren't true. Your brain, ever since you were a small child and were trained to see a world of separate bodies, probably hasn't shown you the truth. And or if you've had some glimpses, some moments where you've seen it, it's been pretty awesome and perhaps scary, because all of a sudden everything is threatened. Everything we thought we knew becomes threatened. So again, Einstein says, if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. And then, many people who listen to our show and who come into our work, they're looking for a way to come to a state of peace in their lives. And Mother Teresa says this, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten we belong to each other. We've forgotten that we're one. And we've forgotten because our brain's been trained to show us a lie. Simple, flat-out lie. If I could see on a higher frequency than what my eye shows me, I'd see the energy that links me to everyone around me. I can't extract myself. And, of course, if we think we're separate and separated from the rest, we have a certain set of behaviors that go hand in hand with that. Once you realize you're one, boy, a lot of those behaviors are going to change, aren't they? David, Jeannie, and if you're still with us, James, would any of your behaviors have changed in your life if you'd have realized you were one with the person you were behaving toward? I know mine would have, like major changes.
Yeah, I think realizing that whatever we do to ourselves is a big one.
Yeah, that's a big bite to chew off.
Yeah, when I have that's what I call realizations and ahas, that, oh, I didn't see that. There's plenty of examples that are out there, and as soon as I see something for the truth of the way that it is, what's that thing that you talk about to, walk in another one's moccasins. If I could see what was going on with that particular person at that time, I would have a different understanding and a different experience of that person, which is me. Those ahas. And to me, that's why I do this work. That's why I get to be on the show, that I listen to the different things, is because I get to recognize something differently. I was speaking with my wonderful cousin this morning, Terry, and he was sharing with me some different things that are going on in his world, and as soon as I was able to tap in and see what's going on in his world, I had a different perception of what it is that he's experiencing and going through. And without that information, I can't see it. I can only see it with what it is that I believe is going on. And so then when someone shares something and they come from owning something, that using the language of responsibility communication, where I use words of, wow, this is what was going on with me. It totally opens up the space for someone else to hear it differently. And I mean, that's so exciting to me. You know, that's just so wonderful to be part of. So the ahas of seeing things differently all the time. And so here we are. I get to listen in and listen to Jane and to listen to you and to listen to Jeannie, and it's like, oh, okay, I didn't see that. I've got another little piece that I can put in there. I've read that book Illusions many times, and I just now got it about when you said that he was there teaching that they're just illusions. You know, I read the book and how he talks about, you know, he doesn't have any bugs on his windshield and he's never stopped for fuel and getting to see the illusions. And I'm thinking about all of the things that the people that he brought into the book of what they were doing and how they were living their life and their illusion, you know, their illusions of what it is that is going on, as well as, you know.
Yeah, it's
so people will have to read the book and kind of get the gist of where I'm at, and as soon as they get there, there's the aha.
Yeah. And to recognize that everything that our mind shows us that has us believe we're separate and separated from everyone else is a lie. It's just not true. So we need to start to work from that base if we're ever going to heal. And you know, there's some interesting Harvard research, which several of you have heard me quote before, that says that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells fire, there are 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity happening in the brain. Perception selects a max of 9 bits of data to show us what we see as going on out there, which really is what's going on in here. It's all internal. And so a definition I'd like to offer of perception, and this kind of ties in. And if there's anybody on the show right now that's finding yourself in trauma or pain, you know, it's a big leap to go from perhaps a state where you don't have these tools and there's trauma to imagining a world where you could be exactly where you are, doing exactly what you're doing, and be in delight and joy and aliveness. But I'll just ask you to just entertain that it might be possible. It just might be possible. And when you recognize you're living in you're seeing a 9-bit world, you're seeing perception, select data. So let's create a definition that makes this usable. And again, if you're in any kind of pain or trauma, there's a powerful line in the Course in Miracles that says, problems are not real, but don't tell that to somebody who's in the middle of one. But we're going to go ahead and tell you that anyway, with the idea of offering you hope of stepping into a different world, because there's a different world available, totally and completely different. So I'm going to offer a definition of perception, and that is that perception is an internally generated image, a picture, an analog image resonated by the digital world. It contains a mix of accurate data resonated by the external world and inaccurate data interjected by the dissociated mind. It's difficult, if not impossible, in normal terms, to distinguish which is which. And the key to identifying the inaccurate data is there any form of hostility, fear, or pain. That tells us that we're in an untrue world. When we're in the true world, there's delight and aliveness. Any form of hostility, fear, or pain means we're in something that's not true. And the reason why it hurts is because we are engaging in energies that don't belong in our field when we do that. And so our work is about learning the Aramaic idea of forgiveness. And in context of our definition there of perception, I'd offer that forgiveness is a tool with which we come back into direct relationship with and remove inaccurate information from the dissociated mind. In other words, remove that which is the source of our hostility, our fear, our pain, and come back into direct relationship with who and what we're designed to be. And as we get to do that, we empty ourselves of, there's another quote that I love from St. Augustine. He says, "Thou must be emptied of that wherewith thou art full, and that thou mayest be filled with that whereof thou art empty. And for Augustine to have had that insight way back, hundreds of years ago, we need to dump the untrue to be filled with the truth. If we're in some form of turmoil or trauma or pain, we're in a world that isn't true. And so, the challenge is what's going on between our ears. The challenge is not. There's another great line in the Course in Miracles that says, it is not the world that makes peace impossible. It is the world you see that is impossible. And there's a woman named Sally Compton who says, it's hard to defeat an enemy who has an outpost in your own head. And when you realize that, the enemy's inside of us, and it's changeable. It's changeable with forgiveness. It's changeable with that technology. And if you're new to the show and you haven't availed yourself of that technology yet, it's freely available on our website. Excuse me. Just go to www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. Download the first two items. Hit the first two links. You get instructions for the worksheet and a copy of the worksheet. Start to put the pen to the paper and watch how the false world begins to disappear. I can't tell you how many people we see who start out in this work so filled with turmoil and trauma and pain and the impossible task of being happy in a terrible world. And when they realize that the world that's causing their pain is inside of them and start to do the work, all of a sudden, external circumstances don't have to change, and they live in delight. And, of course, sometimes we're not willing to live in delight. Sometimes, I like to ask the question in the workshops of this, has anybody ever been in an organ recital? And, of course, a certain number of people put up their hand thinking in terms of somebody playing the organ. But it's like, no, an organ recital where people get together to talk about who's had the most organs removed, who's having the next organ removed, and people whose identity is tied up in their pain and their turmoil and their trauma. Some people come from a genetic system that just love that pain and turmoil and trauma. And they don't know it. And they don't know it's changeable. And if confronted, the stress goes up, and they go, no, I don't want to change this. Look, just let me have another fifth of scotch, and then everything will be okay. I won't have to feel this pain of this world that I'm in. And the whole world is changeable. So as St. Augustine said it, thou must be emptied of that wherewith thou art full, that thou mayest be filled with that whereof thou art empty. Awesome statement about forgiveness from good old St. Augustine. Now, I don't like everything Augustine said. I think he was a pretty wacky guy in some ways, but that's a pretty powerful.
Well, when you say that, Michael, it's like that there's no one that knows and says the right thing at every moment in whatever it is that's going on with them, because that's where they're at that particular moment. And again, when I hear certain things that in my mind that I'm hearing it coming from fear or hostility, and I think that that's really important, that I recognize what it is that's going on with me when I hear or read or understand what's happening. It's taken me a little bit, and I still work on it. It's like, well, when someone is angry, in quote, someone's angry, then am I just seeing them angry, or is that anger that's in me that's getting resonated? And I've got it where sometimes that I can see the anger or the fear or the hostility or sadness and grief in someone else, recognize that I have had that experience, so it's available for me then to hold the space of love for that person to process through whatever it is that's going on with them. And, I was thinking that we continue to invite people to do the forgiveness worksheet, and that in itself can resonate a lot of resistance about forgiveness, because that's one of those words that that usually is associated with guilt, fault, blame, and shame. And I invite people to check out on the website that there are several different tools in order to use, and there's different tools that are available to use for different situations. As you say in the intensive, how do I deal with this particular situation? What about this here? And usually the mind wants to go that way, and there's several tools there that you've created and developed, and one of them that I love is the codependence to interdependence. That is a very, very powerful tool to be able to use to start looking at and to letting go of generational things. So that's just one of the other tools that's offered at the website at www.whyagain.com. And if anyone would like to call in and make a comment or have thoughts about what Michael's talked about so far, or what we've all been discussing, the number is 646-200-4169. That's 646-200-4169. And we're going to be on the air for another 40 minutes or so if anybody would like to call in. And does anyone in the chat room have any comments or anything, Jeannie? So now Jeannie gets to see what it's like. I get to see what it's like for her. She's in there doing her work on that and then having to listen to the phone as well. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Okay. No, I was just going to read. Dr. Tim put out the quote from Einstein that you were referring to, and the whole thing was, a human being is a part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us.
If we're lucky.
And then he wrote, let me scroll down, the computer's slow. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty.
That's where it's got to go.
Quote. That's the whole quote from Einstein. Yep. And Lady Activist is in the chat room, and she is the young lady who we spoke to yesterday in the chat room, and she is in Vegas and looking forward to us being there, and she had asked questions about starting a support group. So we're excited about coming and getting to meet her and see where we go from there. And so while we're talking about that, let's go ahead and make the announcement that we have set our schedule for Las Vegas. We are going to be at, and I'm trying to get the schedule opened up here, starting April 10th.
Unity of Las Vegas is on South Pecos Road, 6375 South Pecos, and on Sunday, April 10th, we'll be doing the Sunday service, and then from 1 to 4:30, we'll be doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And then on Monday night, from 7 to 9:30, and these are all free open workshops, we'll do Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. Wednesday night, we're going to be off Tuesday. Wednesday night, we're going to do Empowered to Heal. Thursday night, from 7 to 9:30, April 14th, Naturopathic Keys to Health. And, of course, you can go to the website, www.whyagain.com. And then Friday, April 15th, we'll be doing Laws of Living. The weekend before that, we'll be doing a 2-day intensive, just about an hour outside of Las Vegas. We don't have all the details on that yet, but if you're interested, you could drop us an email. You could just pop it in, if you jump on the website and hit the contact information correspondence at whyagain.com. It'll come to Jeannie, and we'll have it, and we'll give you details. But there'll be a 2-day intensive, and then the weekend after that workshop, we'll be doing another 2-day intensive. Again, details yet to be announced. That's something that we're working on. In Pahrump on is it Wednesday, Jeannie, that we're going to do a youth seminar in Pahrump?
No, that's Saturday, and I think that one's actually a closed event.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
But then the following week, we have another one. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday. It's on the website as well, and it's open, and it's in Pahrump.
Right. So we'll be doing a youth seminar on Saturday, and I haven't talked to Stephen about just whether it's possible. But I would imagine if there were any youth that wanted to come and participate, we'd make room for them. And then on Thursday, March 31st, we'll be in Pahrump. I think that one's going to be Wise is happening to me again. Someone else is setting our schedule up. Thank you to Dr. Stephen and Claudia for doing that. And so then the 2nd and 3rd of April, we'll be doing a 2-day intensive. And then the 16th, 17th, we'll be at Guadalupe Medical Seminar. I imagine that's going to be for the medical assistants at the Guadalupe Medical Center on April the 6th. And then the workshops at Unity. So, and there's a possibility we're going to be around a little bit longer than that. There's a possibility we could blend something else in if any other venues open up. So we'll look forward to meeting you when we're out there and getting to play a little bit and to share and to use the tools. And I'm working on, as some of you know, a new copy or a new version of Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and the inclination comes to just share one of the key thoughts. And it's kind of based in the conversation that we have, and then a couple of paragraphs from the new book. And the key thought is that human life is simple. We have only two possibilities in terms of how we live. One is trust in being, true being, love, and the other is non-being, fear and hostility. Where love is not, even temporarily, we do not have human life, nor the intelligence to make good choices, for the innate intelligence of being is lost. The human, for all intents and purposes, is dead, a death which, as I observe it, usually happens by the age of 4 or 5 in this culture. It is a death that happens everywhere, that fear and or hostility are common. Its causes: the untrusting, critical, menacing, or otherwise abusive parent, the quarreling caretakers, the raging or self or other demeaning drunk, the threatening, fear-inspiring preacher, the angry, verbally or physically abusive teacher, entertainment systems that raise a child on fear and violence. Though each proclaims good intentions, we all know that what the road to hell is paved with. Intentions are meaningless and powerless when they flow through a mind filled with fear and or hostility. By the way, if that shoe fits, please get over it. Take responsibility for what is yours. Find a true healing path, one that restores you to love, instead of turning attack and rage toward the messenger as though something outside of you is the cause of your rage. Let's have a conversation about the flaws in this system when you have a human life, human intelligence, and a physiological system that fully embodies love. That is human life. There is no greater defiler of the human mind and intelligence than fear or hostility. Achieving a state where we're incapable of any form of fear or hostility will produce an intelligent conversation. And that's what we're looking to move toward, is an intelligent and true conversation, one that begins more and more and more to reflect the fact that our essential nature as human beings is love. And that, in fact, there's only one of us. We're all cells. Individuation does not mean separation. Raise the vibratory rate at which your eye perceives, and you'll see we're all linked. And we're all playing in this game together, and it's time for us to wake up from the insane part of the game, the hostility, fear, and forgive the hostility and fear, and get back to real human life, the awesome presence of love.
Very nice, Michael. Thank you so much. You know, when you use that word, wake up, to awaken, and to me that's exactly along that line of what we started out talking about, illusion. You know, if I wake up to what is really going on and see that where that's coming from, as you pointed out, with hostility or fear, if there's any of that, and this is the culture that's been training and teaching us to come from that place of hostility and fear. In the movies and the TV programs, that exercise that you offered for people to do, to take an hour of their day and surf through the channels and stay no longer than 3 minutes on each channel, and to check off, have a sheet of paper and to check off every time that someone is coming from fear or hostility, and to check off when there's an expression or coming from the space of love. There's a wonderful way to see how much indoctrination is out there about keeping people in hostility and fear.
Yeah, and much of the culture is simply designed to keep people in that hostility and fear because we make great slaves when we're there. It's time for us to wake up and get out of our drunkenness in rage, our drunkenness in fear, which are powerful drugs, and start to actually be restored to the presence of a human life that doesn't love but is love. Big difference. You know, when we're functioning out of that hostility and fear-based mind, we tend to be people looking for love in all the wrong places. If only somebody would love me, then everything would be okay. No, if only you would experience your eternal presence and your eternal being instead of this perceptual mind filled with generational anomalies. If only you could experience your true being, you would experience the awesome presence of love. And if you come from 1,000 generations of rage and fear and grief and murder and slaughter and abuse and rape and pillage, then welcome to the work. There's work to be done. And, of course, we're all engaging in that work at this point.
And that's our purpose for having this program, MindShifters Radio, and so that we can shift, that we can let go of whatever that it is that's holding us in that and shift our mind. And so we invite you to call in at 646-200-4169 and or go to the chat room. And if you have some thoughts or comments that you would like to make, our whole purpose here is to open the space to receive these new ideas. As we were talking about at the beginning of this program, the whole idea is for me to see something differently. When I express what it is that's going on and how it is that I see it, I think, Michael, that the first step of seeing something different is that I have to acknowledge that I might be wrong. And by taking that risk and by acknowledging, wow, maybe I'm seeing this wrongly, let me look and see if there's another way. And that's the only way that anything can open up to me, is by asking the question or acknowledging that I might be wrong about something. I think you said that beautifully with earlier when you were inviting people that, if you've just tuned in for the first time or if you're just looking at this work for the very first time, then a lot of the things that we're saying may not make any sense. And thus, we're here to support you in building the brain cells and the understanding, the new understanding, not our understanding of how it is that we see it, for you to have an idea and for you to look and see what it is, what it's like for you and what it means for you. So.
And if you want to begin that process in earnest, I suggest you jump on the website. David has created a game called Building the Brain Cells. And is it still listed under games, Jeannie?
It's under games, but I also created a separate link for it, too.
Cool. So you can look in the list of links on the right-hand side of the page for Building the Brain Cells, or look under games for Building the Brain Cells. And David's set up a program, and there's a PowerPoint presentation you can watch on it that invites you to make a commitment to take on the worksheet process and begin to use it, because if you don't collapse the output of your insane mind, what's that, Jeannie?
I was just going to say you disappeared there for a few seconds, so I don't know.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
One of the things out of the chat room, they're saying to please remind the audience that we do pass on our issues to the children. It's generational. And we are speaking a link on the website. There is a link out there now on our website, whiteagain.com/links.php, and there's a link to the Ghost in Your Genes.
Yeah, and it's interesting to watch how science is finally catching up. It's only taken a couple thousand years, but you can go back into the ancient scriptures And if you look at the Aramaic and you read it properly, you'll see that they knew all about genetic influences and how it went on. They said things like the sins of the father would be passed into 3 and 4 generations. You knew exactly what they were talking about. Look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. They knew precisely how this genetic structure worked. And if we never come to realize that the content of our own mind needs to be resolved, then we're powerless to change that content, because the painful parts we deny. And, there's the root of the problem. When we enter into denial, we create an unnatural condition. We create a dissociated or an unconscious mind. And when we create that dissociated mind, you can make all the new choices you want to. You can go, I'm going to do this from now on, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be better at this, I'm going to do better at that. But until you can crash that dissociated mind, which is what forgiveness does, you're going to be powerless to change the content of that dissociated mind. And the reason why that happens is because people live in denial of their own unexamined and unresolved passions. And having no experience of the active presence of love, they're helpless over their own unknown dynamics. Until you can own the dynamics of your own life, you're helpless. And if you're ignorant of the power of true forgiveness, you can't enter the chambers of your own heart, your own unconscious, and you'll be run by the very dynamics that you seek to hide from yourself. And, of course, we'll look at somebody else and see them with our problem attached and think it must be their problem. But if I'm the one that's in pain, that's a signal that that's coming from my own perceptual mind. And it's time for me to learn to start to collapse that. And so the Building the Brain Cells game is about joining a group of people who have a commitment. And the commitment is to do, depending which level you go in at, from 1 to 5 worksheets a day, read from 5 minutes to 15 minutes a day in the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And as you do those worksheets and you learn what it means to collapse, and, we talk about it and it's meaningless until you've done it. Until you've experienced being in the middle of your model and then having trained yourself how to forgive, you actually forgive, and you see the shift that happens, it doesn't make sense. And so I invite you to consider jumping on the website, joining the Building the Brain Cells game. There's a separate Sunday evening call for folks who are part of that game. And it's powerful. And thank you, David, for inventing and creating that dynamic. I've taught the forgiveness process all these years, and here you had to come along. And thank you for that, because that idea of getting people committed, we've been suggesting for years that people do 5 a day, but being committed and then reporting to somebody at the end of the day, just sending a text saying, I've completed it. I mean, that's just such a powerful contribution, David, and I thank you for that very deeply, very, very deeply from my heart.
Much appreciation. You're most welcome, Michael, and likewise, the opportunity to be able to even come to that place of enacting that and putting that together. And I had another little piece that I've added to it just from this morning. It's interesting because, to do repetitive things day in and day out, it's like, my mind wants to go, what's the sense of doing this? And I've added a little piece to building the brain cells. So it's building the brain cells and building success, because the only way that we can really, we're always building success. That's what it's about. And when I actively participate in that, then I become more successful with it. I continue to do that, and then I get to see things from a different perspective. So yes, and it is coming along. It's just so much fun and amazing, and the value to receive from this. Interesting enough, I get to watch the board as I'm talking with you, and the idea of watching this board and and being on the show as well and talking, it's not going to happen for me. I appreciate Jeannie even more, because for her to handle
Michael,
that and to listen to our conversation. Go ahead.
I'll I'll try to get Carol or Amy to handle it. Yeah, the first time that we did it, Michael tried to watch the board and talk at the same time, and he hesitated in between each of his words, and finally it was like, no, go in another room. Don't even look at the board. It's very difficult to do all three. So.
Well, it's a perfect model, Jeannie, for what it is that goes on in our mind when that dissociated mind is active, and the conscious active of love. When they're there, there's the vibe. There's the struggle for which one do I listen to, and when there's so much that's being coming at a person, it's like, oh, okay. I use an analogy of talking on the phone. If I'm talking on the phone with someone and someone walks in the room and starts talking, I need to, wait a minute. I need to quiet one, ask the person to stop or whatever that it is so that I can focus on that. And it's the same principle of what we're talking about here, is to let go of that hostility and fear that's yelling and screaming to pay attention to, put that to rest and listen to that inner voice, that inner guidance of love that's going to lead, rather than making the decisions out of the hostility and fear. So thank you very much, Jeannie.
No, I've only got a 9-bit mind.
Pardon me?
I say, don't you know I've only got a 9-bit mind? What are you doing with all this conversation?
That's it. Well, 9-bit is stretching it for me. I think that study was 7 plus or minus 2, and I know that the more hostility and fear that I carry within myself, the quicker that 9 bits gets filled up too. That's we talk about it in the 9 bits, and I was watching a program, and they are continuously recognizing and acknowledging even more and more and more. And when you were talking about the brain, that the brain has 4 million electrical connections in every second. It's like, it's so quick. It is so quick. And we're in charge of that. That's the fabulous part, that I can train it and teach it for it to operate the way that it is that I want it to operate. It's my choice. It's my
we wish we were in charge of it.
Pardon me?
We wish we were in charge of it. Without a significant amount of work, nobody's in charge of it. It runs down. Yeshua, 2,000 years ago, Yeshua spoke of, the master bound by the servants in its own household. And most people are run by that mind because we come from family and cultural systems that are filled with fear, hostility, criticism, and all of those energies destroy human life. And, things like educational methods that are rooted in the avoidance of failure, they fail. They produce the same thing. Each system that is not based in the actual presence and activity of love plays a role in the loss of the experience of ourselves as love. And every energy pointed at that innocent human life. You think about that newborn, and everybody on the planet describes the newborn as this awesome presence of love. And every energy pointed at that innocent human life instills in it a dynamic frequency that's stored literally physiologically throughout the structure down to and including in the genetics. And that compilation of non-human experiences, that is, experiences based in hostility or fear, eventually leads one to displace their original identity, love, with a false persona. The Greek meaning of the word personality is persona. People say, well, what kind of a personality has he got? Well, personality is totally false. It's what we're not. But we have the original identity displaced by that false persona, and when that happens and it overrides being, there's the destruction of the activity or the awareness of human life, and that is, in a certain sense, a death. And, they spoke about that as the first death. And then they said, to he that overcomes, he will not taste of the second death. What is it that needs to be overcome? It's that family and cultural system filled with that hostility, fear, criticism, the educational system, etc. That needs to be changed, needs to be overcome. And so this work is about that overcoming life.
Okay, good. So I think Jeannie is on there now with a question from someone. Were you, Jeannie, are you there?
Yeah. There was someone in the chat room that put, and just maybe y'all want to speak to this. It says, I believe that our job as spirit is to remember our true power of self and manifestation through free will, tearing away the veil.
Well, I haven't seen much free will tearing away the veil. My input would be that what tears away the veil is forgiveness. You can have all the free will you want. Just think about the time that perhaps the first time you heard that life was about love, if you came from, or imagine being someone who comes from a family and cultural system of hostility or fear, and there's a certain person in your life that gives you the look, and up comes that rage or that fear, and afterward you feel terribly, you feel badly, you say, I am a being with free will, and from now on, I am going to choose to function lovingly with you. And that's what you do, right? Until the next time they give you the look. What happened to your free will? It's lost to this non-being self until the non-being self is literally weakened, disassembled through forgiveness. If you remember, Yeshua spoke about in order for you to live, you've got to die. This old self, this non-being self, has to be disassembled. The only thing I know that disassembles it is forgiveness. Free will doesn't do it. Now, of course, we have the free will as to whether or not to use forgiveness, and oftentimes still, you look back at Paul and he says, "That which I would do, I cannot do, and that which I hate is what I do." He had free will, but and he wanted to use it to be loving, but he couldn't. So there's something more needed, I would offer, than just free will, in order to disassemble the non-being or the insane mind.
Yeah, that's as I was reading, and I kind of got the message now clearly from Jeannie that she wanted me to, there's a question in the chat room from this young lady, and my challenge, Michael, over the years has been this the even understanding of what free will is, because that my understanding of free will was that I'm the one that's in charge, that I'm the one that makes all of these decisions, and whenever that I choose something, well, then there's a consequence to it and so forth. And so rather than having the understanding that my free will is to choose love, and when I choose that and tap into that energy, when I tap into my true essence, then I will, the information and the responses that come through are coming from that higher intelligence. My choice of free will is that I willingly choose to tap into that. Am I saying that the word makes sense, or you want to add something to that?
Well, no, I'm in agreement with you that you can choose to tap into it, but if somebody comes along and gives you the look, your choice is out the window, because the resonance of the old hostilities and fears tends to take over. And right. It takes the conscious, consistent application of forgiveness. Literally, each time you forgive, and there will be people who hear about the forgiveness process and go, isn't that fun, isn't that intellectually stimulating, isn't that nice, but we'll never put the pen to the paper. Mm-hmm. And it is the collapsing of that non-being mind, and each time you do it, what happens is the amplitude or the strength, this is all frequency, this is all energy. And I thank God for my background in electronics and physics to be able to understand this, that the amplitude of brain cells, when they have a certain level of emotional amplitude, choice is gone. Something happens that resonates. Remember, we talked about perception, and it's the mix of what goes on in the world and what's happening inside. When there's a certain level of emotional reaction from what's going on inside, choice is out the window. We're now back to gut-level programming, and that's going to run us. The forgiveness process, when engaged properly, is applied to those internal dynamics. It's never applied to yourself. It's never applied to someone else. You don't forgive others. You don't forgive yourself. You apply forgiveness to the dynamic of hostility or fear, and by doing so, you dissolve that hostility or fear so that literally you come to the point where those frequencies weaken. You know, when they said to Yeshua, how many of these worksheets do we have to do anyway? How many times must I forgive? Is 7 times? And in Aramaic, the answer is 77 times 70. That we'll forgive an infinite number of times until we've dissolved the impetus, the emotional energy that's held as a charge in brain cells. And then those brain cells quiet down. Their information's still there, but they don't run you anymore. You've reversed the roles. Now you are the master, no longer bound by the servants in your own household. And that was the real work of Yeshua. And love isn't something that we do. It's what we are. It's coming back to the direct experience of who we actually are, as opposed to looking for somebody to approve of us, because we've been given the message that who we are isn't worthy anyway.
Well, I think that was helpful to Carrie. If she would like some comments, let me see. I'm kind of reading over here. Jeannie's doing a fabulous job of communicating back and forth, and sometimes, well, that made sense to me, Michael. And what I hear you saying is my sense of it is that, you know, each day that I do my worksheets, that what I'm doing is strengthening that connection, that communication that I have with my true self.
Yes.
Because I've let go of certain frequencies, and at the same time I'm strengthening my true essence, so that
yes.
there are going to be things that are going to continuously coming to me. And if I've strengthened myself and I'm doing my work, then when those things come up, and I can speak from a personal experience, that once that I decided I was going to let go of hostility and violence and rage and everything, that didn't mean that there were not things that did not appear and come and happen in outside of me that gave me the opportunity to heal them. It did. And the more work that I did on my personal development, the less that they were out there, and it's like it just disappears. There was an affirmation years ago that was given to me. You know, there's a lot of road rage that goes on out in the world, and people are constantly doing, you know, a lot of it. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. So I received this email one time from notes from the universe, something along that line, and it said that each time that a person were to fly by me or to drive erratically, then I was to say, "Be careful, my friend. I love you. Thank you." And when I started practicing that, then what eventually, and I gave these instructions to a lot of people, and over the years, that there were some people that were living in Chicago. One was living in Chicago. One was out in L.A. and California when I was doing this training, and they implemented that tool, and all of a sudden there was less of that was going on in their life. And I didn't have the forgiveness tool at that particular time. And what I hear you saying is that as we continue to do that, as we start taking responsibility for what it is that's triggered and brought up in me, and let that go, and at the same time connect with our true essence, then we're strengthening one and weakening the other. Is that an accurate way of
Precisely. That's it exactly, and that's where we want to go. And again, if you're new to MindShifters Radio, we're here to support you. Our idea with this show 5 days a week from 2 to 3 o'clock is to be on your support team and the support team of your friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone and everyone that you know, in learning to really, truly live human life and supporting as we support each other in shifting our minds out of hostility or fear into the active presence of love, primarily through the tool of forgiveness, although there are many, many other tools that we utilize. You can go to the website www.whyagain.com, And there are all kinds of tools there. You can spend hours and hours. In fact, we got an email this morning from a person. Jeannie, I didn't catch whether it was a woman or a man that from India that someone had told about the website, and they wrote back about how they were just in tears.
It was a man.
Yeah, how he was in tears about as he read some of the material on the website and realized what was going on in his life. It's pretty awesome to watch how people's lives change when they touch truth. And we're here to understand and actualize truth. And, of course, we don't get very far on our own. It takes a little help from our friends. And so we're here to support you, and we're here to be supported because none of us is perfect. We're all on the path doing the work of healing ourselves, each other, and the planet. And we're here to support you in the process, too. When you look at this non-human mind, the mind of hostility or fear, people who that's their state can only do what's in their minds to do. You can only function out of the brain cells that you have. And once you recognize that love is your essence, you've got some new brain cells, and we can start to move in the direction of functioning out of that. But it doesn't happen on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 10. It's a process, and that process is one of doing your work. Again, putting the pen to the paper, and not just, speaking empty words, but literally, really, truly, in the situation where yesterday there had been some sort of flying off the handle in hostility or fear, to be returned to the active presence of love is such an awesome experience. And what we're here to support you in doing. And we're delighted to be on your team. And I think we're down to about, maybe 4 minutes or so of our hour left. Time flies when you're having fun. Are there any other questions in the chat room or phone calls? Anyone calling in? Any questions or comments?
There's still some conversation you might want to spend just a couple of minutes on about the forgiveness process itself, and that it's not letting the other person off the hook, and it's still talking about family and letting go of family. And so it's not that. It's letting go of what they, because if you just let them go, then you're going to bring somebody else in that brings it up for you.
Yeah, when we do the Greek process of forgiveness, what they call forgiveness, it's not forgiveness at all. But what the Greeks called forgiveness is, you did something really terrible that caused all this pain inside of me, but it's okay. I'll let you off the hook. And many people experience a better relationship with that person when they do that. There is a benefit to it. We're not saying don't do that. We're just saying that's not forgiveness. That's pardoning. And you can unhook someone in your life from the painful brain cells, the hostility and fear, and have a cleaner relationship with them. However, as Jeannie says, if you don't go in and do the forgiveness work, so pardon somebody, let them off the hook, if you may, if you will. That's a nice thing to do. But then go to the forgiveness work, which means you recognize the reason you felt hostility or fear in that situation is because you had hostility or fear in you. And you remove that hostility or fear. And when you truly remove that hostility or fear, the person that yesterday you thought was just crazy, insane, and maybe they were, you look at with compassion instead of judgment and condemnation. And a whole new world opens up. There's a whole new possibility when we open our innate ability to live as actual humans, as the awesome presence of love that we are designed to live as. That's what we humans are.
We've got about 60 seconds, Michael.
Well, we've got about 60 seconds, so we invite you to jump on the website, drop us a note, look up the schedule. We're going to be in Las Vegas next week, and we'll be there for a couple of weeks. You'll be able to tap in. Not everything is up on the website yet, but we're working on it. Thank you, Jeannie, for all the awesome work that you do on the website and all the awesome corners that you've put there. Just fabulous, fabulous material, and the way you've assembled it all is much, much, much appreciated. And so go to the website, download the worksheet, download the instructions, put the pen to the paper, begin to use the process. Call in and share your experience of that with us, and we'll be delighted to hear about your experience of using the tools. And our purpose here on MindShifters Radio is to support you in absolutely having the best year yet of your eternal life, and to become aware of your eternal life in this moment, in this time, in the situation you're in the vernacular, to bloom where you planted. Blessings and love to you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Namaste.